In the quiet and picturesque village of Umueke, life was as serene as the gentle breeze that swayed the palm trees. The villagers lived simple but joyful lives, bound by traditions and a sense of community. Among the people of Umueke, there was one person who stood out, Adaobi, the daughter of the respected blacksmith Nwafor. Adaobi was known far and wide, not just in Umueke but also in neighboring villages, for her unmatched beauty. Her skin was the color of rich cocoa, glowing under the sun with an almost ethereal radiance. Her almond-shaped eyes sparkled like stars, and her smile could light up even the darkest of days. Despite her beauty and charm, Adaobi carried a secret that tormented her every waking moment. While others saw her as perfect, she knew she was far from it. Beneath her enchanting exterior lay a restless heart, burdened by a mysterious affliction she could not explain or control. From the age of 16, Adaobi had felt an unusual fire burning within her, a sensation she couldn't shake no matter how hard she tried. At first, she dismissed it as a fleeting feeling, something that would pass with time, but it didn't. The fire only grew stronger, consuming her thoughts and leaving her restless. It wasn't the kind of fire that brought warmth or comfort. It was an insatiable urge that left her feeling empty and ashamed. At night, when the rest of the village was silent and peaceful, Adaobi would lie awake, her mind racing. She couldn't explain her feelings to anyone, not even her parents. They had high expectations for her, constantly reminding her that as their only child, she needed to uphold the family's honor. Marriage proposals poured in from eligible men, farmers, traders, warriors. But Adaobi turned them all down. Her parents were bewildered by her refusals. Adaobi, her mother Umueke, would say, "You're not getting any younger. What are you waiting for? The gods have blessed you with beauty. Don't let it go to waste." But how could Adaobi explain to them that her refusal to marry wasn't out of arrogance or pride? How could she tell them that she was afraid of being exposed, of not being able to give her future husband the life he deserved? She couldn't. So she kept her secret buried deep inside her, letting it fester like an untreated wound. Adaobi's only solace came from her two closest friends, Nkem and Ifeanyi. Nkem was a lively and outspoken young woman who always had a mischievous glint in her eyes, while Ifeanyi was calm, thoughtful, and fiercely loyal. Adaobi had confided in them about her struggles one rainy evening as they sat under the thatched roof of Nkem's family hut. "I don't know what's wrong with me," Adaobi had whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It's like there's a fire inside me, and no matter what I do, it won't go away." Nkem had looked at her with wide eyes, clearly shocked by the revelation. "Adaobi, are you saying you feel this way all the time?" Adaobi nodded, her voice barely audible. "Yes, it's been this way for years. I've tried to stop it, to control it, but I can't." Ifeanyi, ever the pragmatist, had placed a reassuring hand on Adaobi's shoulder. "This doesn't make you a bad person, Adaobi, but you need to find help. Keeping this to yourself will only make it worse." Though their support gave her some comfort, Adaobi couldn't help but notice the subtle change in Nkem's demeanor over time. While Ifeanyi remained steadfast in his loyalty, Nkem began to display signs of envy and resentment. Adaobi's beauty and the attention she received from men had always been a sore spot for Nkem, and knowing her secret only fueled her jealousy. One fateful day, as Adaobi made her way home from the market, her path crossed with a stranger's. She had been carrying a basket filled with yams and vegetables, struggling to balance it on her head, when she stumbled over a loose stone and nearly fell. "Careful there," a warm, deep voice said as strong hands steadied her. Looking up, Adaobi found herself staring into the kindest pair of eyes she had ever seen. The man was tall, with a strong build, and a smile that could melt even the coldest of hearts. His name was Obina, a trader who had recently moved to Umueke to expand his business. "Are you all right?" Obina asked, his concern evident. "I'm fine," Adaobi replied, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "Thank you." Obina insisted on helping her carry her basket the rest of the way home, and as they walked, they struck up a conversation. Adaobi found herself laughing at his jokes and feeling a sense of ease she hadn't experienced in years. By the time they reached her family compound, she realized she didn't want their time together to end. Over the next few weeks, Adaobi and Obina grew closer. He would often stop by her father's workshop, pretending to be interested in buying tools just to catch a glimpse of her. Slowly, their friendship blossomed into something more. For the first time, Adaobi felt a glimmer of hope. Obinna was kind, understanding, and patient, everything she had ever dreamed of in a partner. She began to entertain the possibility that he might be the one to help her tame the fire within. But as their relationship deepened, so did Adaobi's fear. She hadn't told Obinna about her secret, and the thought of him finding out terrified her. She couldn't bear the idea of losing him, so she resolved to keep her affliction hidden. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Obinna asked Adaobi a question that would change her life forever. "Adaobi," he said, taking her hand in his, "you are the most incredible woman I have ever met. Will you marry me?" Adaobi's heart raced as she looked into his eyes. She wanted to say yes more than anything, but a voice in the back of her mind reminded her of the fire she couldn't control. Still, in that moment, her desire for happiness outweighed her fear. "Yes," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'll marry you." The news of their engagement spread like wildfire through the village, and preparations for the wedding began immediately. Adaobi's parents were overjoyed, finally seeing their daughter on the path to a happy and prosperous future. Nkem and Ifeanyi celebrated with her, though Adaobi couldn't shake the feeling that Nkem's enthusiasm was less than genuine. As the days turned into weeks, Adaobi's anxiety grew. She knew she couldn't keep her secret from Obinna forever, but she didn't know how to tell him. Every time she tried, the words caught in her throat. She hoped that once they were married, the love they shared would be enough to keep the fire at bay. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be that simple. As Adaobi and Obinna's wedding day approached, the village buzzed with excitement. It was shaping up to be the event of the year, with preparations in full swing. The women of Umueke gathered daily to weave colorful fabrics, while the men constructed a grand canopy under which the couple would exchange their vows. The air was filled with the aroma of freshly prepared delicacies: jollof rice, roasted yam, and spiced goat meat. To the villagers, Adaobi and Obinna were a picture-perfect couple. Obinna's reputation as a hardworking trader and Adaobi's beauty and charm seemed like a match ordained by the gods. But beneath the surface, Adaobi was a storm of emotions. Each passing day brought her closer to the moment she feared the most, when her secret would be impossible to hide. The fire within her had not subsided, not even for a moment. At night, as she lay in bed, her mind raced with guilt and fear. She couldn't bring herself to share her burden with Obinna, afraid that it would shatter the love they had built. Instead, she focused on the wedding preparations, throwing herself into the details in an attempt to distract herself. Her friends, Nkem and Ifeanyi, stood by her side during the planning, though their roles were markedly different. Ifeanyi, ever supportive, helped her choose the songs for the ceremony and ensured that every detail was perfect. Nkem, on the other hand, seemed distant. Her smiles were forced, and her words carried a hint of bitterness that Adaobi couldn't ignore. "You're so lucky, Adaobi," Nkem said one afternoon as they sat under a mango tree. "Not everyone gets to marry a man like Obinna." Adaobi smiled, though she sensed an edge to Nkem's words. "I know, Nkem. He's everything I could have hoped for." Nkem's lips tightened into a thin line, but she said nothing more. Adaobi decided to brush it off, attributing her friend's mood to stress. Unknown to Adaobi, Nkem's resentment was growing. She had always envied Adaobi's beauty and the attention she received from men, but it wasn't until she learned of Adaobi's secret that her jealousy turned to malice. To Nkem, it was unfair that Adaobi, despite her hidden struggles, was about to marry a man as kind and loving as Obinna. "She doesn't deserve him," Nkem muttered to herself one evening as she sat alone in her hut. "How can someone with such a shameful secret find happiness while I'm left with nothing?" The thought consumed her, and soon Nkem began to plot. She wanted to expose Adaobi's secret, to ensure that the wedding would never happen. If she couldn't have happiness, neither would Adaobi. Meanwhile, Obinna remained blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing around him. He spent his days overseeing the wedding preparations and his evenings with Adaobi, who he adored more with each passing day. One evening, as they strolled through the village, Obina took Adaobi's hand and said, "I can't wait to start our life together, Adaobi. You make me the happiest man in the world." Adaobi's heart ached at his words. She wanted to believe that their love could conquer anything, but the weight of her secret threatened to crush her. She tried to muster the courage to tell him but faltered. "I feel the same way," she replied instead, forcing a smile. As they walked back to her family compound, Adaobi's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She knew she couldn't keep the truth from Obina forever, but she hoped that somehow the gods would intervene and make everything right. The night before the wedding was a festive affair. Friends and family gathered under the stars to celebrate, singing and dancing late into the night. Adaobi wore a radiant smile, though her heart was heavy. Nkem, however, had other plans. Under the guise of helping with the final preparations, she sneaked into Adaobi's hut and retrieved a small bundle she had hidden there earlier. Inside were letters and trinkets that Adaobi had kept over the years, tokens from her encounters with the men who had temporarily quelled the fire within her. Nkem carefully arranged the items in a bag and left the hut unnoticed. Her plan was simple: to reveal Adaobi's secret in front of everyone at the wedding. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, the sun casting a golden glow over Umueke. The village square was transformed into a vibrant celebration, with colorful decorations and the aroma of feasts wafting through the air. Adaobi was dressed in a stunning ivory gown adorned with intricate beadwork. Her hair was styled into an elaborate crown, and her face glowed with a mix of joy and nervousness. As she stood before the mirror, she whispered a silent prayer asking the gods for strength. The ceremony began with traditional blessings from the village elders, followed by heartfelt speeches from family members. As Adaobi and Obina prepared to exchange their vows, the air was thick with anticipation. But just as the elder raised his staff to bless the couple, a voice rang out from the crowd. "Wait." All heads turned to see Nkem stepping forward, holding the bag she had taken from Adaobi's hut. "There's something everyone needs to know," Nkem said, her voice loud and steady. "Before this wedding continues, the truth must come out." Adaobi's heart sank as Nkem began to reveal the contents of the bag. She held up the letters and trinkets, her voice dripping with accusation as she recounted Adaobi's secret. Gasps filled the air as the villagers looked on in shock. Obina's face turned pale, his eyes filled with confusion and hurt. "Adaobi, is this true?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Adaobi felt her world crumble around her. She couldn't speak, couldn't move. The weight of her secret, now laid bare for all to see, was too much to bear. I can explain," she stammered, tears streaming down her face. But Obina shook his head and walked away, leaving Adaobi standing alone before the crowd. The villagers murmured among themselves, their whispers carrying judgment and disbelief. As the ceremony dissolved into chaos, Adaobi fled, her heart shattered. She ran to the one place where she felt safe, the riverbank where she had spent many quiet afternoons as a child. There, she collapsed onto the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Back at the village, Nkem watched the scene unfold with a mix of satisfaction and guilt. She had succeeded in stopping the wedding, but the sight of Adaobi's pain left her feeling hollow. For all her jealousy and resentment, she hadn't anticipated the depth of Adaobi's heartbreak. Ifani, who had witnessed everything, confronted Nkem. "How could you do this?" he demanded. "Adaobi trusted you, and you betrayed her. She doesn't deserve him." Nkem snapped. "Why should someone like her have happiness when the rest of us have nothing?" "That's not for you to decide," Ifani retorted. "You've destroyed not just her wedding, but her trust in you. I hope it was worth it." Ifani stormed off, leaving Nkem alone with her thoughts. For the first time, she began to question whether her actions had truly been justified. Adaobi spent several days in isolation by the riverbank, trying to come to terms with what had happened. The betrayal by her closest friend, the public humiliation, and the loss of Obina weighed heavily on her. She felt broken, unsure of how to move forward. As she sat by the water, reflecting on her life, she remembered the stories her grandmother used to tell her about the importance of confronting one's demons. Adaobi realized that running from her truth had only led to greater pain. If she were to have any hope of rebuilding her life, she needed to face her struggles head-on. Adaobi returned to the village, her head held high despite the whispers and stares. She went straight to Ifani's home, knowing that he was one of the few people she could still trust. "Ifani," she began, her voice trembling, "I need your help. I can't keep living like this. I want to heal, but I don't know how." Ifani, though still angry at what had transpired, saw the sincerity in her eyes. "Adaobi, healing won't be easy," he said. "But the fact that you're ready to try is the first step. I'll do whatever I can to support you." Together, they sought out a healer from a neighboring village, a woman named Nwanyinma, who was known for her wisdom and skill in addressing spiritual and physical ailments. Nwanyinma listened intently as Adaobi poured out her heart, sharing everything: the fire within her, her past encounters, and the pain it had caused her. "The fire you speak of is both a curse and a blessing," Nwanyinma said. "It stems from an imbalance in your spirit, one that has been with you since birth. But with patience and determination, we can work to restore harmony within you." The healer began a regimen of herbal treatments, meditation, and spiritual cleansing rituals. She also encouraged Adaobi to write down her feelings and experiences as a way to release the shame and guilt she had been carrying. Meanwhile, Obinna was struggling to move on. Though he was deeply hurt by Adaobi's secrets, he couldn't ignore the love he still felt for her. He tried to focus on his work, but memories of Adaobi haunted him. One day, as he walked through the marketplace, he overheard two women gossiping about Adaobi's efforts to seek help. "She's seeing that healer, Nwanyinma," one of them said. "It seems she's serious about changing her ways." Obinna felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps Adaobi was genuinely trying to heal. Though he wasn't sure if he could forgive her, he decided to visit Nwanyinma to understand what Adaobi was going through. When he arrived, he found Adaobi sitting under a tree, writing in a journal. She looked up, surprised to see him. "Obinna," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I needed to see you," he replied. "I've heard about the steps you're taking, and I wanted to know if you're okay." Adaobi's eyes filled with tears. "I'm trying," she said. "I know I hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know that I'm doing this for myself, not just for you or anyone else. I want to be whole again." Obinna nodded, moved by her honesty. Though he wasn't ready to rekindle their relationship, he offered his support. "Take your time, Adaobi. Healing isn't a race. If you ever need a friend, I'm here." Back in the village, Nkem was grappling with guilt. Watching Adaobi's public downfall had brought her no satisfaction, only a sense of emptiness. She began to reflect on her actions and the jealousy that had consumed her. One day, she mustered the courage to visit Adaobi at Nwanyinma's home. Adaobi was surprised to see her, but listened as Nkem poured out her remorse. "I was wrong, Adaobi," Nkem admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I let my jealousy drive me to hurt you in ways I can never take back. Please, can you ever forgive me?" Adaobi, though still hurt, saw the sincerity in Nkem's apology. She took a deep breath and said, "Nkem, what you did was devastating. But holding on to anger won't help either of us heal. I forgive you, but things can never go back to the way they were. Trust takes time to rebuild." Nkem nodded, understanding the consequences of her actions. "Thank you, Adaobi. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make amends." Months passed, and Adaobi made significant progress in her healing journey. The fire within her no longer controlled her life, and she began to rediscover the joy of living. Obinna, too, found himself drawn back to Adaobi. Seeing her transformation and determination to change softened his heart. He visited her one evening and said, "Adaobi, I've watched you fight for yourself, and it's inspired me. If you're willing, I'd like to start over, not as lovers but as friends. Let's see where this path takes us." Adaobi smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I'd like that, Obinna. Thank you for giving me another chance." Their friendship blossomed once more, and over time, it grew into a deeper bond. When Obinna proposed to Adaobi a second time, it was with the understanding that their love was built on honesty, trust, and mutual growth.